Okay, next up is Adam. Please welcome Adam.
There we go. First of all, I want to say thank you to Sydney for having my back. I was getting yelled at by Ned for not wearing a tie, so that was very helpful. So welcome to our presentation. It's called Philosophy of Flow, Escaping Identity Politics, and Imagining New Futures. And I just want to say also thank you on behalf of everybody who's here for supporting us. I think it really does mean a lot that we have this opportunity to share with you, so thank you for that. All right. So in order to put a philosophical solution to any problem, you have to identify what exactly that problem is. So I see that problem as states and corporations being able to create associations in our head to make us act in ways that are irrational or against our will. And I'm going to use Tony the Tiger here to represent that. So Tony is the mascot for Frosted Flakes. If you're familiar with the cereal, it's a frosted corn flake. But he's attaching himself to a sports game here, and he has this fun costume. He's a tiger. He's like this exotic, unique animal. And it's making the argument that if you buy the Frosted Flake, if you buy the cereal, that you are going to be athletic, you're going to be sporty, you're attaching yourself to all these different ideologies, which don't necessarily follow any coherent stream of logic. They're exploiting you for cash. They're trying to get your votes. They're pandering to you. Like, nowhere does the Frosted cereal do that for you. So that kind of gets me to my main question, is how can we take control back from these corporate and government structures? And secondly, how can we escape pre-configured campground politics? Because once we're in these identity circles, once we say we're an athlete or whatever, we're automatically pandered to, we're automatically targeted as a demographic. So the first concept I'm going to use to do this is this concept from this guy, Gilles Deleuze. He's a French guy and has some ideas to share. And he has this idea called deterritorialization. Deterritorialization is a process by which a certain set of cultural relations, a certain set of social organizations are disrupted or changed in some profound way. So there are two forces that are competing to deterritorialize. You have capitalism on one hand, and you have schizophrenia on the other, and this is his world. And you have a cultural system that decodes, and it's decoded by capitalism. So if you think about something like Christmas, in the 1600s versus Christmas now Christmas is commodified. Now Christmas is all about the gift. It's all about Santa. That mythology revolves around it, and it brings consumers into that area, where now you have the state-propagated axioms of consume, of be a good political subject, etc. Schizophrenic thought works very differently. Schizophrenic thought is messy. It doesn't tie into certain identity groups. It goes all over the place. And one thing that's important about schizophrenia is that it mimics narratives from within. You can see in this quote here that the schizo maintains a production of desire always at the margin of social production, always repelled, but such a man is a free man who can do things by asking permission. So you can achieve a sort of freedom by coding your identity into such a way that people don't necessarily know how to reach you, how to target your demographic. And I think this is kind of best used with an example. So if we go here, I have a quick clip from The Simpsons, which I think does a good job explaining. Hopefully you can hear.
Thanks for the word. Executive, legislative, and judicial.
No. Maybe we should start all over with the electrical college.
Your deportation, first you'll be rounding up your tithe, then you're poor, then your huddled masses, you don't need to breathe great.
All right, so what makes this schizophrenic in my mind is I think you first have to consider the cultural scene that The Simpsons emerged onto. So The Simpsons emerged in this era of 80s, 90s television, where there were these very typical family sitcoms on the screen. When you think about something like The Cosby Show, if you think about something like Family Ties, you have this authoritative, fun family father figure, and then you have maybe some unruly but endearing kids, and that is the scene that most of these families look like. And The Simpsons is a parody of that. it's based around this family structure, but at the same time, it's mocking it. And I think, TV has the ability to go all over the place. It can pick up strands, oh my God, there's some mic here. It can pick up strands at some point and then drop them as soon as it picks them up. And I think that is something that's very important to why it's able to be schizophrenic, is that you're not able to tie the symptoms to any particular political ideology. And similarly, the way it is given to you, the way it has these bright animations that makes you want to consume, it's generally part of this apparatus capitalism, but in the same way it's able to critique it the best because it's inside. Now, applying these concepts to a different question, we had this question in Blue's colonial study called the language debate, and if it's possible for people in formerly colonized communities to write in the colonizer's language. And there are many people who say, no, you should just take your ball and go home because native people cannot read what you're writing. If you're writing in a different language, they can't write, or they can't read something that is not in their language. And secondly, you're not gonna be able to capture the cultural values that are just tied to language itself. And I think that those are really good arguments. So, you have to look at this guy, Homi Bhabha, who has some arguments against it. And he makes 2 points. One is our ability to change the signified, our ability to change what language actually means. So if you think about what a word like queer meant like 20 years ago, it meant weird, it meant different in this very pejorative, very scoffing kind of sense. Where on the other hand, if you look at it today, it can stand for pride, power, individuality, all these very positive things. And I think that shows the power that you have to change language. And secondly, you can reinterpret written culture. And one example of this that I see is when you think about something like Shakespeare's The Tempest, there are now all these forms of writing, like postmodern writing, where you can reinterpret that writing. Like Amy Cesar has this work called Une Tempest, where it is an inversion of The Tempest, but instead of the land that Prospero is coming to, it gives proper acknowledgement to the natives who live there. One of the characters, Caliban, is a black intellectual. So there are ways to bridge this gap between, so when we have, instead of having a Western literature and an Eastern literature and an African literature, we move closer to this global literature that is not, getting closer to this international culture that's not based on exoticism or multiculturalism, not based on difference, but instead based on how our cultures are coming together, how they're mutualized. All right, so this is Ice Spice. If you're over 35, you probably know who Ice Spice is. She is a rapper from the Bronx. And she emerged onto a hip-hop scene that is often very anti-LGBTQ, with people like Migos, The Baby, Eminem, who use homophobic slurs in their lyrics. But The Baby is very much inside the rap scene. She is a drill artist from the Bronx, like many other Bronx artists, like the late Pop Smoke. She raps about stuff that a lot of other rappers rap about, like jewelry, boys, designer bags, and has the same sort of brazen individual spirit that a lot of other rappers do. But she's bisexual, which helps deterritorialize hip-hop away from this heterosexual matrix. And she can do this partially because she's on the inside. She's part of the popular, she's part of the media machine. And because of that, she's able to create a lot more space than she would if she were just totally different in every single way. So I think that is something that we should look to, especially in music and art, how they can create space in different areas. So in order to finish this, I'm just gonna give you this message of being creative. I think like in this presentation, like you can see like it went all over the place from pop culture to weird philosophical problems and such. And I think like when you're in a moment of political gridlock, when it feels like you can't, reach the other side, when it feels like there's no good discourse happening, I feel like it's almost the best moment to have conversations using different concepts and tying together different concepts. And I feel like if we can try and reimagine and rethink our current political situation, I think that is where we're gonna get the best outcome. So thank you so much for